Because I'm a Knicks fan and because I work in the media and I have a job to do, I've been trying to stay middle grounded. And what I mean by that is in the early part of the season, I'm trying to make sure I don't brush too many things off as it's just early, they'll figure it out, give it time. And I'm also trying to not fall too far into the side of panicking and being dramatic, pretending that we're not 7 or 8 games into the season, as if there isn't 70 more games to be played and figure out different things. And I say that to say I've enjoyed some of the things I've seen with my Knicks. We're 3-4 right now to start the season. And offensively, I really don't have much complaints. I mean, there were a couple possessions in some of these games, like against the Hawks, where I felt like to close out the game, our offense has to be better. We're too good of an offense to get the look that we had in the corner for Cat that led to an easy transition look for the Hawks. We're just too talented to not know what we're doing at the end part of games, especially against a Hawks team who had just lost 2 games to the Washington Wizards, right? And we knew what we were getting into when we acquired Karl-Anthony Towns. And I'm not a guy here that's going to use this video to kind of revisit the trade, because I am solely a believer that without the trade, there are still some issues that we will be talking about 7 games into the season, and it could be a little bit worse. So when we acquire Karl-Anthony Towns, we know we're getting an offensive guy who is leagues above a lot of centers in the NBA, right? His offensive toolbox is limitless. He can score on the block, pick and roll, pick and pop. He's an underrated passer. Karl-Anthony Towns is a really good offensive player. But the glaring thing for me throughout the first 7 games that kind of gives me cause of concern for the future of our team, especially when we talk about playoff basketball, is the deficiencies he brings to the defensive side of the basketball. I will be honest. When we first got Karl-Anthony Towns, I was extremely excited. I was extremely happy. I'm still happy and excited. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think I realized how big these deficiencies were going to show up. And a part of that was because we also acquired Mikal Bridges and we retained OG Anunoby, and that wing duo defensively on paper had everybody going, nuclear, like, oh my goodness, could this be the best wing tandem that we've seen in a very long time or in NBA history? A couple of us got ahead of ourselves. I was one of them, and we still have time to see that play out, and we'll figure that out as the season progresses and whatnot. But throughout the first 7 games of the year, it's been disappointing, and a lot more disappointing than I expected on the defensive side of the basketball. So what I'm going to do a lot in this video is I have numbers, right? I have numbers and stats from the overall season. I have different notes and different things that I've taken from all of the games that I watch. We're not really going to bring up that Boston Celtics game too much because that was just crazy. We all saw what happened. But outside of that game, I've got notes and different things. But because I'm a Knicks fan and because I do my job well, I revisited and watched a lot of this stuff multiple times. So we're going to make sense of the data and the analytics and the numbers that we have. And that's something that we do on this channel for my new viewers or anybody that's not as familiar. We're not just taking numbers and throwing them at you and saying, hey, that's just what it is. No, we try to contextualize everything that's in front of us and make sense of it. And you have to do that by pairing it with the film and the footage. And I know a lot of times in the NBA world today, a lot of people are box score watching or metric watching, and that's just the answer to everything. For me, I'm a guy who I watch the games, but I do understand and acknowledge that there is a place for stats and analytics, and I'm going to use them as well. So to start, defensively right now, the Knicks are the 21st ranked defense, and that's not too crazy to start the season. There is a world where we're so good offensively that I think we don't have to be a top 10 defense at all or anything like that. But I do think we have to be better than 21st when you think about the type of teams we're going to match up with throughout the Eastern Conference when it comes playoff time and how good and polished some of these offenses are. One of the things that I want to start with us is the points in the paint. We give up 51 points in the paint per game, which is 23rd right now. And I think that is the anchor to all of our defensive problems. And it goes back to Karl-Anthony Towns, who is our center and who is anchoring our defense, right? And when I watch these games, and a lot of y'all who probably watch games too, because I know a lot of Knicks fans are going to watch, Karl-Anthony Towns' biggest issue is his feet, right? He's not light on his feet at all. And actually, it makes me appreciate some of the other defensive talents that we have around the league, like an Anthony Davis, or you see now Chet. Obviously, Vic is really, he doesn't count because he's really a cheat code player. But a guy like Anthony Davis, when you watch the Lakers, you see the defensive plays he makes, and some will leave you in like, oh, like, wow, I can't believe he made that play. But at the course of the game, I think we take for granted how light on his feet at his size that he is. And you kind of, puts in perspective when you watch a Karl-Anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns right now is struggling significantly for us in the pick and roll. And that's going to be an issue that is going to be there all 82 games. Tom Thibodeau is a phenomenal coach on the defensive side of the basketball and in general. Like, as good as he is, it's going to be very hard to work around Karl-Anthony Towns' feet. So we're going into these games and we're playing drop coverage. We already don't have Mitchell Robinson. So our center rotation right now is Karl-Anthony Towns and Jericho Sims. We don't even have Precious Achiuwa. We played Huck Porty a little bit. I am a big fan of him, and I'm going to talk about him at some point again in the video. But Karl-Anthony Towns' feet are very hindering to us. Even in the games we won, like a Pacers game where we beat the hell out of the Pacers, the defense was still worrisome to me because we're going to have to play the Pacers again. And the Pacers are a team where they missed a lot of shots. Right. And matter of fact, we're going to hold off. We'll get to the Pacers. Right. To continue with some of the numbers, our opponent field goal percentage on twos right now is at a 58.9%. Opponents are shooting almost 60% on twos against us, which is tied for worst in the NBA with the Los Angeles Lakers. Again, the paint defense is a super big problem because a lot of these twos are in the paint. A lot of teams are not taking, the long mid-range jump shots too much. No team is having too much of that in their diet in 2025. So when you talk about 2-point percentages, it's really getting around that basket. Opponent field goal percentage inside of 6 feet, so right there at the rim, is 68%. Teams are shooting nearly 70% at the rim against us because we don't have a shot blocking threat. Because Karl-Anthony Towns, once teams do their pick and roll, he's normally kind of in between and isn't quick and light enough on his feet to play and recover. So what a lot of centers would do is off the pick and roll, whether first and foremost, some teams are gifted and super blessed enough to have centers who can hedge, hard hedge, or even soft hedge, and they have the foot speed to recover and play both and play that middle. A lot of times, and I love the fact that we played a lot of teams that have had dynamic guards because we're getting an early taste of what it will look like. Karl-Anthony Towns is in a position where he's guarding both the ball handler coming downhill and his guy who's now rolling after the screen. And he's in between both of those two players, and he has to stop. Like, for example, against the Hawks, Trae Young is a threat with the float shot, and he's also a threat with the lob pass to a guy like Clint Capella or Onyeka Okongwu. And Karl-Anthony Towns, his feet are so slow and choppy that he can't really commit to either or, but playing the middle isn't helping either because he's trying to stay back enough to where he can defend the lob, but he's trying to contest the floater. And a lot of these actions that you're seeing when you rewatch the game, or some of y'all might see it live in the game, we're giving up uncontested looks. And then you have times where Karl-Anthony Towns gives up the uncontested looks. So the very next play, what does he want to do? He wants to go try to block it and contest it and do his job. But then he'll do that, and now he's taking himself out of the play. So what happens? Clint Capella, even if Trae Young misses, got the offensive rebound and went back up and got a 2 that way. And you'll see a team like the Cavaliers, who we'll talk about, where Darius Garland was able to step right into 3-point shots because of the drop coverage. And that's my biggest fear, is that we're going to play a lot of different teams like the Boston Celtics, where that drop coverage is going to go into their philosophy of, hey, let's make them pay and let's shoot the 3 ball. A lot of teams in the NBA are getting up these 3-point shots. So when you're playing drop coverage and you have these dynamic guards like Donovan Mitchell, like Darius Garland, Trae Young, Damian Lillard, Tyrese Maxey, and then you talk about Boston with Tatum, Brown, White, who's making a crazy amount of threes. Even Drew Holiday can make shots. That's a dangerous game to play because more and more teams, they want that shot. Teams are looking for ways to generate as many 3-point shots as they can throughout the course of a 48-minute game. And you're inviting that with playing drop coverage, especially with the way Mikal Bridges have navigated these screens throughout the first 7 games. I have confidence and belief that Mikal Bridges will continue to progress as a defender the more the season goes on. But as of now, There has been issues with Mikal. I don't think by any means Mikal is all of a sudden a bad defender, but I think there's a marriage there because you have to give him some grace because of how we're guarding the pick and roll. When there's drop coverage and teams know that, you're putting him at a disadvantage because he has to get through the screen and he has to get there in time to be able to contest the shot, and he also has to do it without fouling. I've seen some plays, I can't remember who it was against. It had to be Trae Young, where of course you're coming off the screen and he stops in his tracks and Mikal is called for a foul, and we all know that bullshit play. Shout out to Trae Young. That's just a play he's kind of made famous. But there's a lot on Mikal's plate when he's navigating through these screens, trying to recover. You have situations where he don't know if he's switching or not. I've seen a bunch of plays where Karl Anthony Towns recognized it late and pointed to Mikal, hey, just go there to my guy. It was against the Pacers because Miles Turner can shoot the jump shot. It was a lot of times where the play is happening, Halliburton, McConnell, whoever is coming, Nembhard is coming off the screen, and Cat is recognizing that, hey, at this point, they're coming down here. They're downhill, so I should just take on an assignment, and I'm going to just guard them to the paint. You go to mine. He was pointing, but it was too late of a recognition, and Mikal is still chasing, and now Miles Turner is making you play with a nice mid-range shot, bottoms of the net, boom. To me, those are the type of detailed things that I think gelling can help with, right? And there are some of the things that we can overcome with communication and reps and understanding and the feel for each other on how to communicate and whatnot. But I don't think that's enough to get us over the top. Another thing that we have in front of us is inside of 10 feet, our opponents are shooting 62% from the field, which is 27th in the league. So again, the closer teams are getting to the paint, the better they're shooting against us, because we, throughout the first 7 games, have guarded the three-point line extremely well, which I think is a little bit food for gold, which I'll get into next. But yes, opponents on threes are shooting 34.9, basically 35% from three. We're 10th in the NBA when the guarding and defending the three-point line. My thing with that worries me too is when I went back and looked at a lot of the three-point, almost all of the three-point looks that a lot of these teams are getting, they're very good looks. Like, majority of the shots teams have generated against us have been wide open threes. And I'm worried because I know and I believe that at some point, some of these teams are going to make those shots. For instance, against the Indiana Pacers, and let's get into it. We beat the hell out of the Pacers. And that's the best part about our team, is that sometimes we're going to have games where we're just that good offensively, where we're just knocking down shots, we're knocking down our threes, we're hitting on all cylinders, and we're just going to be better than you on offense. And if you're not making us pay on the defensive side of the basketball, we're going to run off with the game. And that's exactly what happened against the Indiana Pacers. We had a night where Tyrese Halliburton really wasn't feeling himself, couldn't make shots, was kind of indecisive. The more and more the game went on, he had some shots he forced. He only took 8 shots, really only 7, because one of the 8 shots was a half-court heave. But when you go back and you rewatch some of the looks he had, the first shot of the game was a wide-open float shot that a guard of his caliber normally and probably majority out of 10 times are going to make at a high clip. He had some three-point shots that were completely wide open that, again, he just wasn't making that night. And then we did have some possessions where we did defend him really well, and we forced him to be a shot creator, which we all know at this point Tyrese Halliburton isn't really trying to do. He's trying to set the table for everybody else and get his in between all of that. But when you turn him into a shot creator and force him to hunt his own shot and create for himself off the dribble, that's not the brightest part of his game, as we've seen as the season is going on. And we had some really good possessions with that. Shout out to Mikal, shout out to OG, and shout out to our team for some of those possessions. But we still gave up 70 points in the paint against the Indiana Pacers, right? We gave up 70 points in the paint. 70 points. 70 points in the paint against the Indiana Pacers, who don't have a Giannis Antetokounmpo, who don't have a crazy paint presence, because Miles Turner is a center who you're looking at the space the floor or whatever. And they shot not only 70 points in the paint, but they shot 71% on twos. By the grace of God, we were able to stop them from knocking down three-point shots. I mean, the last three-point shot they made came in like the middle or around 8-7 minutes left in the second quarter. So the last 2 quarters and a half, they didn't make a three-point field goal. They didn't make not a single three-point field goal. And when I went back, I looked at every single three-point shot that they took. They had a lot of wide open misses that when we play them again, we cannot count on them to miss. We cannot count on the Indiana Pacers shooting 10% from three again. We just cannot rely and count on that. So we're going to have to figure out ways, again, to not allow teams to shoot 70% on two-pointers and not be able to score 70 points in the paint. There were possessions in this Pacer game where TJ McConnell was just getting 2 feet into the paint, whether he scored or not. And oftentimes what happens is on one play I'm thinking of specifically, TJ McConnell got to the paint. He got past Miles McBride or Mikal Bridges or somebody. And Karl-Anthony Towns or Jericho Sims, they went to contest the shot at the rim, which is what they're supposed to do. But when you do that, you now allow offensive rebounds, and a person like Isaiah Jackson was able to go in there and clean it up. And it was just so easy for them to get 2 feet into the paint and for them to score. And because they were missing shots, we were kind of able to take advantage of that and run off with that game. We did solid on some of my notes. We did solid on Hallie. He had some open looks in that first half that didn't go in. Brunson on Hallie, reject screen, Mikal help. Yeah, we had plays like that where I just think our communication, which is something I'm hopeful about, our communication. There is a play right here where Halliburton is rejecting the screen, but Brunson, because he was on him, he jumps the screen too hard. It gets rejected. Mikal overhelps. He leaves the corner. And Benedict Mathurin was able to make one of the threes on this play because I feel like throughout the course of these games, I'm seeing us be in too much of help. We are too eager to help. And don't get me wrong, help defense is important. I'm not saying we should abandon the help, but there are some plays where I just see us like that play where we're completely leaving our guys. We're not stunting or anything like that. We're not digging. We're completely turning around, losing sight of our man. And oftentimes we're giving up a bucket. And these are some of our elite defenders. OG Anunoby in the same game had a play where he completely abandoned his man, and Pascal Siakam cut behind him for an easy layup. Mikal Bridges has lost sight of his guy. Josh Hart is the guy who, when I watch the film, he's one of the biggest guys and does it. He helps so much. And a lot of times it's needed. It goes back to the pick and roll defense and having Karl-Anthony Towns be so vulnerable that a lot of our other players feel like they have to make up for him and log up some of that space because he just can't cover too much space. But at the same time, that's why a lot of teams, in my opinion, are generating so many good three-point looks. We're over-helping. We're losing sight of our men. They're cutting on us, and now that cut makes the rest of the defense collapse and over-collapse, and now teams are getting open three-point looks, and they're rotating the ball. And our rotations sometimes are nice and solid, but there have been too many times in some of these games against the really good teams where the rotations are just not there. And a lot of these good teams are going to make us pay, especially in the playoffs. The other thing I have is no switch on handoff double screen. Mikal wanted to switch with Deuce, Mathurin 3. So this is another Mathurin 2. Another early thing that I'm picking up on that I'm a little hopeful of is the communication. Like I mentioned with some of the screen actions and different things earlier with Mikal and Towns. But there's also this thing where it seems like, I'm not for sure, it seems like the rule is the wings can switch. Just don't switch with Brunson because obviously we're trying to hide Brunson. And there are certain times throughout the game where guys like Josh Hart are just super ready to switch. When you watch Josh Hart defend and you're seeing the screen action, you'll see Josh Hart is pointing early. Like the screen is coming, just switch. We're switching. He's ready to switch. He's always ready to switch. But what happens is you get so programmed into that when you have certain rules in the defense, like, hey, we're not switching with Brunson, it happens. It's like, oh, shit, I wasn't supposed to do that. And then you have certain things where it seems like a guy like Mikal is still hesitant. There are some plays where I've seen in the film where Mikal is trying to tell Deuce McBride, hey, we're going to switch, and Deuce isn't picking up on that. There's not a clear communication, and now you have two guys going to one player. There's a lot of times where Mikal and OG are doing that. And to me, that's the one that's most frustrating because I feel like a lot of times we as the Knicks defensively, we can live with Mikal and OG switching. Like, we want teams to put those two guys in action. We'll live with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want you spamming the action of Karl-Anthony Towns and whoever's guarding the ball handler. If you want to do actions that involve OG and Mikal, we're like this. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But still, throughout the first 7 games, there are a handful of plays that stood out to me where these two guys are like going to the same person and they're not understanding that they can switch. And what happens is miscommunication. Two guys go to one player, they swing the ball, somebody has to rotate, and then boom, and somebody is generating an open three, or now the offensive glass is vulnerable because not everybody is being boxed out. Those are the detailed things that are happening, especially in the very crucial parts of these games, like the Rockets game, the Hawks game, the Cavs game. These are all three losses that were very winnable, that we had detailed mistakes happen in very crucial times. And those are the things that I'm hopeful that, again, we can clean up on and that we can fix. Against the Cavs game was very interesting. We started with Mikal on Donovan Mitchell. We had Josh Hart on Darius Garland. We had OG on Evan Mobley. We did Brunson on Dean Wade, and then we did Cat on Jared Allen. This is a game where we only gave up 52 points in the paint, right? I'm saying only because when you give up 70, that is a big head scratcher. We gave up 36 points in the fourth quarter. That is not good, especially against a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. But the reason I'm okay with that is because historically throughout the first 7 games, we are 19th in fourth quarter points given up to our opponents. We have only given up 28.6, which sounds like a lot, but according to the rest of the NBA, that's 19th. That's solid. I would love for that number to go down a little bit. And then second half defense, we're only allowing teams to score 54.4 points in the second half, which is 9th in the NBA, compared to the first half where we're giving up 56 points in the first half, which is 15th. So again, encouraging stuff where it feels like we start off games a certain way, and our coaching staff and Tom Thibodeau, they're able to go into halftime and make defensive adjustments where we perform better as a defensive unit on most nights. I mean, the 36 points against the Cleveland Cavaliers don't really help that argument. But again, on most nights, it seems like we're improving in the second half defensively than in the first half. To me, again, that's one of the signs that makes it hopeful and encouraging for us as a defensive unit outside of Mitchell Robinson rejoining his team at some point, which we'll get to. They started the game with a very interesting action, and this brings up another significant point for me with the Knicks and their defense. The Cavaliers started off, and shout out to Kenny Atkinson, very, very clever. He started off the action involving Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. So the play is Donovan Mitchell has the basketball. He's being guarded by Mikal Bridges. He swings the basketball to Jared Allen, who's like on the left elbow. Jared Allen then gets the ball and does a dribble handoff with Dean Wade. Jared Allen is being guarded by Karl-Anthony Towns. Dean Wade is who we're hiding Jalen Brunson on. They're making it an effort, starting the game by saying you're not going to be able to hide Jalen Brunson. And what this turns into is Dean Wade then gives the ball to dribbles, takes the handoff, and Darius Garland comes off a flare screen, a unique flare screen, kind of like inverted flare screen off of Jared Allen. And that gives him off the catch. He rips through, gets past Mikal Bridges, and now Karl-Anthony Towns is again in that defensive situation where he doesn't know if he should stay back so Garland can't dump it off to Allen, or if he should contest and be vulnerable there. And what ends up happening is Darius Garland gets the uncontested 2-point float shot at the rim, which is why teams, again, are scoring so much and so easily at the rim against us inside of 10 feet, inside of 6 feet on a per game basis. Again, this is one of the things I'm trying to cut guys some slack. It's a tough situation for Karl-Anthony Towns to be in, but it's something he's going to have to get better at if our team is going to reach his fullest potential. He's just going to have to find a way. And secondly, this is where I cut some slack from Mikal because of the defensive assignment and the stuff that is on his plate. But he has to be just a tad bit better with not allowing guys to get past him so easily. There's been too many times in this game it really stood out where Darius Garland started to really feel himself in the fourth quarter, and he was having his way a little bit with Mikal Bridges. It's a tough assignment. We're never going to go into these games asking Mikal Bridges to stop Darius Garland, to stop Donovan Mitchell, to stop Damian Lillard, or stop any of these premier point guards. But he has to be a little bit better with giving them resistance in the situations in what he can, because he's going to have his work cut out for him in the pick and roll defense. And that, to me, was just a very clever play. And the reason it was substantial to me is because that's our problem as a defensive unit, right? Historically, teams have been able to hide guards that are non-defensive. You know what I mean? The Warriors were able to hide Steph Curry. Hell, we were able to hide Jalen Brunson. The Boston Celtics were able to hide Isaiah Thomas when he was the leader of that team and whatnot. That's always been something we've seen in the NBA. The harder thing to do is to hide your center, the guy who's anchoring your defense, who's the last line of defense, who is seeing everything. That is very hard to hide. And it's damn sure even more harder to have to hide both. We have to hide two players. And again, it's hard for me to even say we have to hide because it's impossible to hide your center. It's way too hard to hide your center. But we have two legitimate liabilities that we have to figure out how to blanket. Even in this game, the pick and roll defense with Garland was just not there. The drop coverage, again, they generated so many great looks, and they shot 25% in the first half. They shot 25% in the first half from three on a lot of good looks. I mean, Dean Wade was spoon-fed at some of the most wide-open three-point looks that you can imagine. He didn't make them. Sam Morrell had a couple good looks. He made one. He missed the other. Garland missed some shots. They came out, and in the second half, they shot 44% on those same type of looks. This is my worry, where it's early in the year and we can look at the stats and say, okay, we're doing a good job defending the three-point line. Teams are only shooting 35% from three. That's 10th. We guard the three-point line extremely well. But then you go and you watch the games and you're saying, are we guarding this well? Or are we really just kind of getting lucky with some of these teams not necessarily making us pay on a consistent basis? Because that's what I'm taking from it. But in a series against the Bucks, I mean, Damian Lillard might average 35 points. Now, my argument is I'm not trashing my Knicks because there are some teams that, like the Bucks, who if they're going to be as ass as they've been defensively, we're just going to outscore them, right? Like, that's just what it is. We've seen Dame and Giannis go off for 30 apiece and still lose to teams in this early part of the season. The Knicks are a team that, hey, you can have that. Damian Lillard can make all of the threes he wants, and we can come back and make 22 threes ourselves. But my other counter argument against myself as a Knicks fan is I've seen us, like another game I'm going to reference, which is this. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We got a couple of games to get to before that. But we shot 22 threes against one of these teams and still lost. I think it was the Houston Rockets, which we'll get to. Another game I want to go over against the Miami Heat. This is a game we won, and this is a game where, again, our offense is just so good. We had 44 points from Karl-Anthony Towns. We made 18 threes as a team. But, again, here's some positives. We only gave up 38 points in the paint against them. When we are not being super vulnerable in the paint, we're going to give ourselves such an advantage to win these games because of how good we are offensively. We now have another guy who on any given night can go off of 40. We used to have just Brunson, and it was like, man, maybe Dante DiVincenzo can give us a game like he did in the playoffs. That was always cool. Maybe Julius Randle, could go off for a game, but Karl-Anthony Towns is the real deal offensively. We now have two guys at any point that can pop off from all three levels, right? Mid-range, long range, at the paint, passing, pick and popping, and they can play off of each other. That's super, super, super significant for us on the offensive end. OG, this was a game that OG was ball watching. He did a lot of ball watching this game, and the Miami Heat have really good cutters like Jimmy Butler. And there was a specific play that stood out to me. I can't remember, but I wrote it in my notes. OG was ball watching, and they made us pay. Duncan Robinson scored in the paint against us, ladies and gentlemen. Duncan Robinson set a screen, and he slipped as if he was a 7-foot center like Jared Allen. He slipped, went in the paint. Tyler Hero got him the ball, or Terry Rozier got him the ball, and he scored in the paint off of a slip. A screen and slip for Duncan Robinson equated to 2 points against us. That's insane. To me, that's insane. To just judging off of who Duncan Robinson is, and to just visualize that play. Some of y'all are probably trying to picture that play, and you can't. I would encourage you to go find that play. I wish I had it written down, the time and score when it happened, but it was kind of the wildest shit for me to watch. But ultimately, again, we won that game. I didn't really love some of the looks that we gave up, but it is the Miami Heat who haven't really had the best offense. They've been disappointing with their usage of Bam Adebayo. Jimmy Butler has had a solid start to the year, but still not as aggressive as I think a lot of Heat fans want. They don't have one of those super dynamic guards as well as Tyler Hero has been playing. He's no Trae Young. He's no Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell or anything like that. So I think they were a team where even when they have certain good looks or even with some of the vulnerabilities we give up, they're a team we can beat. We're just more talented, and we're going to have a lot of nights like that. Even with this next game against the Pistons, it's like we won, and I'm happy we won, and I'm not trying to discredit every win that we have. But my issue isn't against the Pistons. It isn't against the Miami Heat. You know what I mean? Of the worlds, even the Hawks. Like that's a game we should win. That's a game that I feel confident that we will win. But some of those bad habits I'm seeing and I'm viewing, and I can only imagine when it comes to being April and May and it's playoff time, and you now go from it being Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren to now it's Tatum and Porzingis. So it's Dame and it's Giannis and Tyrese Maxey and Embiid. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's where my mind is going at for this team, because we're not in a place right now where making the playoffs is the goal. We've done that for the past few years. We want to go on a run. We want to go to the conference finals. We want to have a chance to compete for a championship. So a lot of these details that stand out are significant against the great teams, because that's who we're competing with. I don't look at the Miami Heat as like a team of competition for us. Same thing with the Detroit Pistons. I don't look at them as like the same bracket of caliber of team that we is. But anyway, we beat the hell out of the Pistons. We had 30 points every quarter. Again, offensively, we're just going to have certain nights like this, especially against teams like this where we're just too damn good. We had damn near 70 points in the first half. 39-13 start in the first quarter. We gave up 50 points in the paint to them. We gave up a 33-point second quarter to them. But what we did do, which we haven't done much this season, is we forced them to have 22 turnovers. Now, ironically, I wrote down in my notes, Cade Cunningham, who is one of the guys who kind of leads the league in turnovers as far as guards go, maybe overall too, he ironically only had one turnover. And that kind of, we won, but it still kind of pissed me off, because it's like I want this team to cause more turnovers. When you think of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby being on the wings, and you think about the hard-nosedness of Josh Hart and the way he plays, I want this team to force and cause turnovers, because good things are going to happen for us when we do that. And the fact that we only average 7 steals a game, which ranks 23rd in the league, it bothers me. And when I see us cause 22 turnovers against the Pistons, but only one comes from Cade Cunningham, who controls the basketball an awful lot, it does bother me. I'm nitpicking, but it does bother me. Blocks. We are averaging 3.7 blocks, almost 4 blocks a game. And that is what, 27th in the NBA. Like, I want to see this team do some of that. Granted, Mitchell Robinson isn't back. When Mitchell Robinson comes back, obviously we're going to add some more blocks on the board. And that's another thing. Like, when I watch a lot of this footage, I just rather Karl Anthony Towns not go for blocks. He does this thing where he puts 2 hands up, and it's almost like a 2K animation. It's like he does it because he feels he has to as a center to make it look like he's trying to contest or block a shot. And it's like the lightest defensive pressure ever. Like, he just puts his hands up, and Donovan Mitchell just sidestep, go up. Tyler Hero just sidestepped it, went up. Trae Young just side. You know, it's like at that point, don't even do that. Don't even do that. Like, don't go. I don't want Karl Anthony Towns chasing blocks. He's gotten some blocks this year, and he's gotten some good ones. But because we're not doing it enough, I would just much rather him contest and box out. Don't leave the paint vulnerable for offensive rebounds and second chance points by chasing a block that you're not getting too often. As a team, we're just not getting too often. I'd much rather just close defensive possessions out and contest it. Now, I'm not saying just not contest it like some of these possessions, but it's like I see a lot of our players going out of their way and taking themselves out of plays to make certain plays that we're just not executing on. Miles McBride took himself out of a play against the Pacers, and it led to a 3-point shot. And it's just like, I don't think it was worth it. You know, now, let's not even chase the home run still at that point. Like, let's just be a competent. We're not that type of defensive unit where we should be making home run plays yet. When we get there, or if we get there and we're steady enough, then I can understand it. But when you're only averaging 7 steals a game, is it really worth trying to get an 8th one when the drop off or the difference is a wide open 3-point shot? I don't think so. Is it worth Karl Anthony Towns chasing a block when we're already ranked 27th in block shots? Clearly, we're not doing a good enough job of that. So it's like, let's focus on getting these defensive rebounds, because there's no way we should be ranked 26 in defensive rebounding. I know we play at a slower pace, so the rebounding numbers are always going to be a little swayed, but still, at least we don't give up offensive rebounds. We give up we give up almost 10 offensive rebounds a game, which ranks 7th in NBA. But yes, Best defensive performance was against the Pistons. Again, I don't want to discredit all of our wins because I'm not here to trash my Knicks. I have all of the faith in the world that we're going to be a really good regular season team. My concerns are just in the playoffs. But I do say that to say it's the Pistons. We're supposed to make them turn the ball over 22 times. I mean, they shouldn't feel comfortable allowing Ron Holland to play real minutes against us. You know what I mean? Like Jalen Duren had a lob that he just missed, and that's a turnover, and we win and score 2. Like we're that much better than the Pistons where we should do that. Now, the Rockets game, one of the most disappointing games of the season so far for me as a Knicks fan. First and foremost, we scored 97 points, and this is the type of game that really stands out to me. And this is my argument for Knicks fans that might say, hey, we're doing so well offensively, because I've tried to convince myself that. But these are the nights that you have to prep for. As good as you are offensively, I think you're as good as you are on your bad nights. And that's what I really want to see from this Knicks team. How do we look and how do we perform when we're just not having one of those nights? Because those nights are going to happen, and you can't control it. But you know, as basketball players, as basketball coaches, and as basketball fans, we watch and consume too much basketball. There's just certain nights where even the greatest shooter like Steph Curry just don't got it going. There's certain nights where even the greatest scorers ever like Kevin Durant just ain't got it going. It ain't too often, but they happen, and they can happen in the playoffs depending on who you're playing and how good enough they can scheme against you. So when we have nights where Karl-Anthony Towns ain't dropping 44 or Jalen Brunson ain't dropping 44, and there's just a really good defensive-minded coach like Ime Udoka that can just cause us some things, or there's just some better matchups for the opposing teams, how do we survive? We scored 97 points, which is 16 points below our season average of about 113 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And here we go. We give up 62 points in the paint. That was the biggest thing about this game. Alperen Sengun punished Karl-Anthony Towns. It was so bad that, here we go, we're trying to hide the center. OG Anunoby had to take that assignment. To start the second half, Tom Thibodeau said, you know what? Towns, you don't guard him. OG Anunoby, you guard Alperen Sengun. And I love it, and I respect the versatility of OG. But that's, again, we're setting him up for failure, because as good of a defender he is, especially on a switch and sometimes being able to hold his own throughout the course of a game, he can't deal with Sengun on a block. Sengun was still having his way. And what ends up happening even more is now we're extremely vulnerable on the glass because he's way too much to ask to box out on a consistent basis for OG Anunoby. And it was really frustrating with Karl-Anthony Towns this game, because Karl-Anthony Towns was then matched up on Amen Thompson, and he still was not in a position to help. You're guarding Amen Thompson, who right now in his career is not a perimeter threat. And there was countless times where he was just not there in a help position for the rest of his teammates. So that is two things, where he now doesn't have the foot speed and his feet are too chunky, but he also doesn't know where to be. And there, I'm a details guy. I look at everything. I pay attention to everything. There is a specific play in this game in the second half where OG Anunoby or somebody, Josh Hart, is guarding Alperen Sengun. I believe it was OG. And he's going to work on the block. He's turning. He's scoring at the rim, and you'll see Jacob Toppin, and you'll see Precious Achiuwa, who was hurt in street clothes, talking to Towns from the bench like, yo, you got to be right there. Achiuwa is like, you got to go up and help him right there because you're guarding Amen Thompson. You're in a position to just leave your guy. And those are the things that, again, as great of an offensive talent as Karl-Anthony Towns is, as great as a guy he is, because I'm always rooting for Cat even before he was a Knick, those are the things that concern me, frustrate me, and irritate me, even though we're 7 games in the series. And those are the things that make me feel like we won't be able to figure out these problems. At this point in his career, it's going to be very hard to teach and coach him where to be. It's hard for me to believe that he genuinely doesn't know where to be. Right? Like, Karl-Anthony Towns has to know that Amen Thompson can't fucking shoot from the three-point line, that he can abandon him and go help his team. He has to know that, right? Doesn't he have to know that? Y'all let me know in the comments if I'm tripping. Does he not know that? Is he incapable of knowing? There's no way he does not know that. That's no way that that's not in the scouting report. And again, those are just the things that make me worry. 24% from 3. We did a really good job there. Or I don't know. I don't even know if we shot 24% or if they did. I don't know. My notes. I was so frustrated with the points in the paint and some of the help that I just wrote a note down that had nothing there. I would believe that we held them from 20 to 24% from the 3-point line because they only made a handful. Yeah, I wrote in my notes, Cat has no idea where to be. This is another game where we showed a lot of bad communication, a lot of guys going to two players, a lot of guys not knowing when to switch, a lot of guys just being on two different pages. And again, you have to hope that when we get a little bit further past the gelling point, that these things will get ironed out and we'll be a little bit more better on that end. They beat us in the rebound category, 50-39. They shot 10 of 14 on twos in the fourth quarter, which is 60. They shot 63% on twos, and we only had 3 bench points, which that frustrates me too because it's going to be very hard to win games where you can't get anything from the bench. That was just a game where offensively we just weren't there. I think Deuce McBride may have went like 0 of 9, 0 of 7 from the field and missed every single shot. Deuce is not. He's not been playing like that all year. That's kind of an outlier. But again, those are the games that stand out to me, and those are the games that I think us Knicks fans we really have to pay attention to. Because we're as good as we can be on those nights. We can beat anybody when we're clicking on all cylinders. We can beat anybody when we're, you know what I mean, when Karl-Anthony Towns is going for 44 or if Brunson is going for 44 or you know what I'm saying? Like, we can beat anybody on that type of night. How good can we be when the opposite is happening? How good can we be? How good can we be when we have to get a stop to win? You get what I'm saying? So that's what I'm looking at. And the last game I'll reference and talk about, which is the last game, is the loss against the Hawks. I said the Rockets game was the most disappointing. I take that back. If I said that, it was the Hawks game that's most disappointing, not the Rockets game. We gave up 58 points in the paint to the Hawks. We only had 36 points in the paint for ourselves. We gave up 16 offensive rebounds. Like, just disgusting basketball. We should never fucking be giving up 16 offensive rebounds. And we made 22 threes. How do you lose a game where you make 22 threes? That's supposed to be a blowout win. And again, this team in the fourth quarter, they shot 8 of 14 on twos, or in the second half or something like that. But the reason this loss was so disappointing is because it felt like the Hawks are like, here, have the win. Our rookie came out to play, but we kind of trying to tank so y'all can have it. Like, they were just leaving the door open and open and open. And in that fourth quarter, we took that lead, and I thought that was it. I believe we had a 5-point lead, 110 to 105, and I got extremely comfortable and was like, yeah, we ain't giving that lead back up. And to just watch us allow them to create whatever they wanted in the paint was extremely frustrating. And again, I believe they went 2 of 7 in the fourth quarter from 3. We did a good job on some of those looks. They had some wide open looks. They had a Trae Young heave, a Trae Young off the dribble, and a Zachary Ricochet off the dribble. And they had a tough contested Jalen Johnson look. So about 4 of those 7 threes we did a really good job on. But I think the other 2 were wide open, which Jalen Johnson made 1 of them. And then Garrison Matthews at the start of the fourth quarter, he hit a contested 3 on Karl-Anthony Towns. But again, I feel like they left the door wide open. I feel like this was a mixture for us. This is a bad defensive game. Because we allowed the rookie Zachary Ricochet to have, 33 points. He made 5 threes in the first half. Again, another game where those threes teams are now making because they are really good looks. They're really good looks. And a team like the Hawks can make those threes and now not only make it a game, they can put themselves in a position to win. And that's exactly what they did. And then down the stretch, when you talk about that last play in specific, I just didn't like the offensive set. But we have to be able to find ways to get stops. We have to find ways to put Karl-Anthony Towns in a better situation. To close out the video, some of the things that I will say is the starters have played 128 minutes together throughout the first 7 games. We have a negative 4.5 net rating. We're being outscored by nearly 5 points when our starters are on the floor. The starters without Mikal Bridges, they've played 21 minutes. They've been a plus 32. The 74 minutes with no Mikal in general, starters or not, is a plus 28 with a 94.2 defensive rating. And the 64 minutes without OG were negative 7 with a 136 defensive rating. And then OG without Mikal Bridges in 58 minutes is a plus 31. We just have to be better. We have to be better. I have all of this stuff in front of us about the different subunits
in the ratings for our starting lineup when some of them are off the floor, some of them on the floor. It's just a tough situation because, again, Karl Anthony Towns' superpower is the offensive end of the floor. And when Mitchell Robinson comes back, we're not going to be able to really play them together because Mitchell Robinson's lack of spacing kind of negates everything that Karl Anthony Towns gives you. And the numbers and everything show that when we don't have Karl Anthony Towns, even if we improve a little bit defensively, we drop off significantly on the offensive end. Like, we just are not good on offense without Towns or Jalen Brunson. But defensively, they bring the issues. So we talked about Karl Anthony Towns on a podcast about the last few seasons he had in Minnesota. He was solid because there was a defensive culture there, because you had a defensive player of the year next to him in Rudy Gobert, who was one of the best rim protectors in his generation. You also had Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards. You had Mike Conley, Kyle Anderson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid. There's a lot of defensive players who are at least average to above average defenders. We don't necessarily have that same case in New York, where now Karl Anthony Towns is the back line of the defense. And we are playing him a lot of minutes with Jalen Brunson. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, no Brunson and no Towns minutes are, very hard to come by. You're not going to find us as the Knicks playing too many minutes without either one of them on the floor. Both of them off the floor has been 39 minutes. I'm sure a lot of this is garbage time. It's a -3.5, almost -4 rating, net rating. And when they're on the court, we're plus. We're plus 0.08. So that's because of the offense. We're just a smudge better on offense than we are defensively. So it's going to be some things that Tom Thibodeau is going to have to figure out. I do know one thing. I believe Huck Porty is a diamond in the rough, and we're going to have to find some minutes to give him soon, because the way he defends is night and day against Karl Anthony Towns and Jericho Sims. He's much more lighter on his feet. He's a lot bigger body. Because he's hungry for playing time, he's an outstanding communicator. And I'm not saying Towns and Jericho Sims don't communicate, but the tone he communicates with when the screens are coming are a lot different visually when I'm watching than those guys. And because he's so much lighter on his feet, he moves around a lot more better and a lot more effortlessly. There's a lot of times where you see Karl Anthony Towns defending a pick and roll action or defending somebody hunched over. He's not even crouching to a defensive stance. He's not even dropped. He's just standing up and he's kind of hunching over, and there's no way you're going to be able to move laterally and quicker on your feet in those defensive possessions. Porty is also a guy that can really go and block those shots and contest and challenge seriously. So I would love to see him have more minutes. There's other guys in our rotation like Cam Payne, who I know to give us a little spark on the offensive end. I just don't know how much Cam Payne is going to be able to play with a team that already struggles defensively, because a lot of the footage I saw when he was on the floor, guys are going right past him. He's just like a cone out there. So I don't know if Tyler Kolek is going to have to play or whatever. We're going to have to really dive into our team and our roster and figure out who can play minutes and give us something defensively. Because as the season progresses, we're going to be a good team, but we're going to get to these playoff type games and we're going to be looking like, hey, what are we going to do? The Boston Celtics, we're going to have to play if we want to have, a chance to go to the championship. The healthy Philadelphia 76ers is slow. The teams that are having a slow start should even worry us even more, because we've seen last year what a slow start does. A slow start means we potentially might play the Bucks in the first round. Yeah, a Bucks team that has a guy who will live in the paint. And as we can see, we're extremely vulnerable in the paint. So Giannis Antetokounmpo is definitely the type of player that could get Karl Anthony Towns in foul trouble, and if not, still can score X amount of points in the paint. They also have a guy like Damian Lillard, who's a perimeter threat. When we're playing drop coverage, he will gladly walk his ass into 7 to 8 threes. The same with Tyrese Maxey, the same with Joel Embiid. We're going to have to face teams one way or another, and they're going to have some dynamic players who are either going to score very well in the paint or they're going to score very well from the perimeter, and we have to figure out a way to stop it. I am Pierre Andreessen, host of Numbers on the Board, also known as Pee Wee the Plug. This is the Pee Wee the Plug channel. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Let me know how y'all feel about all of this in the comments and some of y'all reactions and concerns about y'all team or my Knicks. I'll see y'all in the next video. I'm out. Peace.